This next section is on cooling. And we're looking at, first of all, in cooling, one of the things that can be accomplished by irrigation systems for cooling is to delay budding. So your first thing there on your note sheet is bud delay. This happens in the springtime when we have a cooling effect within an orchard or vineyard. We delay the spring, effectively, the springtime, by cooling the temperature down in an area. We kind of trick that plant into thinking it's still colder out than it really is, and so it slows its metabolism down. And in the process, it delays the length of days it'll actually extend the length of days it's going to be until it buds and blossoms. So sometimes we can, if we have a really early spring coming on and we're concerned about having some frost occurrences, we can go out and irrigate early during those warm days. By irrigating during the daytime, we are actually creating evaporative cooling. We're cooling that orchard as we're irrigating, and we're tricking that plant into thinking it's really cooler than it really is. So that is the concept of using irrigation for bud delay.
Is it because during springtime we have warm days and cold nights?
Yes.
During the day they think it's warm, so they're gonna try to bloom, and then during the nighttime they're going to freeze.
That's exactly the case. And so what we're trying to do is cool those daytime hours down within the field so that we don't have the plant thinking like it's time to bloom, to start blooming. So sometimes we want to stall that. There are years in this valley, darn trees will start to bloom in late February. And that makes some real nervous Nellies out there. If you're a farmer and you have your trees blooming that early, there's an awful lot of potential nights that you're going to have frost between then and the time to get past the frost occurrence window that you're looking at. Another thing we can use that cooling helps is on seed germination. Now we're getting into something that really starts to show up in the turf industry. When we want to plant a lawn in the middle of summer, it's a great time because you got a lot of heat units, a lot of radiant energy. You can get that grass seed to take off really quick. We can go out here and plant a lawn, and in 3 or 4 days you'll have stubble growing. I mean, you'll see it, it'll turn green. With these new perennial ryegrass blends, in 4 days you can go from newly seeded to a totally green surface on real hot summer days. Now the trick is you have to maintain surface moisture, and also in the process of keeping the surface moist, you're creating that evaporative cooling so it doesn't get too hot. Because we just don't want it to scorch it out and get it so darn hot that it will scorch or burn the tips of those new shoots as they come up out of the ground. Now there is one little twist to this. If you apply water and have it beat it up on the grass seed, and enough solar energy, enough sunlight comes through those little droplets, that's the word I'm looking for, droplets of water, those droplets actually act like a magnifying glass, and they will scorch or actually burn the leaf surface underneath them sometimes. So if you get really bad conditions, where you get some really excess heat, intense sunlight coming through on those droplets, and you have the system cycling on and those droplets sit there and the timing's just wrong, sometimes you can burn some of the new seedlings that are coming up. It's not going to take out the whole group of them, but you're going to have some damage in that regard potentially. I've had that happen to me once planting a lawn. It was really bizarre. Where the shade was, perfect. Wherever the sunlight was hitting it, and it was just over a few minutes on an afternoon, and the sprinklers had just cycled. It was dead calm. That it was a really protected area. Those droplets just sat right on those little leaves, and the lawn was up about an inch. And every place where that sun was getting direct sight in this one area of the lawn, the front lawn had plenty of air movement, so the water droplets were breaking down and going into the ground and evaporating off. But in this backyard, there was one little spot where there just wasn't any air movement, and the water stayed beaded on those leaves of that new grass, and boy, I tell you what, it just scorched the liver out of that little patch. And all around it was just fine. But it was right where the sun had that intensity with all those droplets on it. So sometimes you have a real rare occurrence. Now it kicked right back out of it. 2 days later you would have never known it happened, because this thing was growing really vigorous and everything was great. Other than that, we just scorched the tips off of a little bit of that grass.